right, and happy Friday, everybody.
Happy Friday.
Welcome to the Back Catalog Listening Party. My name is Mother Banjo,
My name is Anthony Ihrig.
and today we're joined by Dar Williams. Hi, Dar.
Hello.
And, well, I don't know what you guys are drinking, what kind of week you've had. I know that Tony had his first vaccine yesterday. So did
Yep.
I. And feeling a little sluggish, but we're so excited to have Dar here because things are going to get a lot peppier and more exciting. And but I'd love to know how you are doing on this Friday. Put it in the comments if you're drinking anything, where you're tuned in from. Looks like Alan has joined us, a regular from Texas. And no gin and tonic today, Alan? What?
Curious.
Yes, we'll have to know the story there. But let's see. We have Sue and Connie.
Hi, Sue.
And Connie saying, saw you in a concert with Joan Baez here in St. Paul, February 1996. Awesome.
Shaughnessy? How do you pronounce it?
O'Shaughnessy.
Shaughnessy.
And
All right.
Matt from Urbana, Illinois, joining us, and Joe from South Minneapolis. Well, hello. And what are you all drinking out there? Tony, what are you having on this
Well,
Friday
I'm going
afternoon?
up to beautiful Two Harbors, Minnesota, to the Castle Danger Brewery.
Oh, one
for
of my
the Castle
favorites.
Cream Ale. Yes, kind of a
Nice.
mellow, a mellow beer here for the day after the COVID shot.
Well, I am drinking a beer from Iowa called Single Speed, and it's a cocoa mint milk stout.
Ooh, that
Yeah.
sounds fancy.
Yeah, kind of dessert beer happening here. And Dar, what are you drinking where you are at in New York?
I feel like such a Debbie Downer. I'm just drinking water.
There's
Whenever
nothing wrong with that.
Nope.
I mean, it's filtered.
Yeah, there you go.
And we got Sue here having a glass of wine. So excited to hear this. And our friend Penny in Northfield. Hey, Penny. And Sammy. Great to see you. One of our former guests on the show, Katie Doll, wrangling a puppy and drinking a
Katie.
New Glarus. Ooh, New Glarus. We
Yeah,
can't
we
get
love
that
the
here
New
in
Glarus.
Minnesota, Katie. So
Yeah, we have
an
to go
extra one
across
for
the
me.
border for that. Yeah, and then we have Chris, one of our regulars, and then Randy from Wales joining us today.
Greetings.
Right on.
So, well, thank you all for joining us today. We're really excited about the show. And this is one of the artists that I've been wanting to have on the show a long time. And I think I was bugging you about it, Dar, probably last summer or something. So I'm so glad it worked out to have you on.
Me too.
And for folks who maybe aren't familiar with your music, maybe you want to give us a little 2-minute bio of how you got into doing this music thing and kind of what led up to this record in particular.
Two things. One is that I moved to Boston and I wanted to be a playwright. And if you want to be a playwright, don't move to Boston. I mean, not then at least, and it was a music town. So there was an open mic every night. And they were called the Half Moon, the Whole Moon, the Full Moon, the New Moon coffee houses. And the other thing was my parents' record collection, and I they just had like this really heavy folk rock, 60s folk rock collection. And I remember when I was a teenager being like, wow, like what would it be like to be playing music that you felt was really important to society, because they really believed in themselves. Judy Collins singing songs by Jacques Brel and Leonard Cohen and Paul Simon and all these foreign, songwriters and writing songs herself, like really believing that this was really life or death stuff. Like, what would that feel like? And sure enough, the wheel had turned, so that kind of music became possible in the early 90s. And there I was in Boston with everybody else, and the radio stations playing all that kind of music that the new generation was playing. So those two things, I think, right place at the right time for doing that, and a strong jolt of inspiration from my parents' record collection.
Excellent,
Nice.
excellent. And also you mentioned sort of that there were a lot of other artists coming up in that time period in the 90s in Boston. Name some of those other artists just so people can put it in context of, because there's a lot of people who are now pretty big that were coming up during that time.
Well, okay, so there's all of them, and then there's like just the ones I slept with. No, just kidding. So Jonathan Brooke and Jennifer Kimball were in a group called The Story, but both of them. And then they went off solo. Vance Gilbert, Ellis Paul, Jim Infantino, a really great songwriter named John Svetky, although he's more regional. And Patty Griffin really wasn't part of the scene. She, you can probably tell that she was kind of doing her own thing, and so she was off doing cool stuff. Except she was my first gig because I opened for her because she was a what is it called? Cocktail waitress, basically. Like she worked the bar down the street with my housemate, and my housemate said, I told my friend Patty that you're interested in being a folk musician, and I gave her your cassette, and she said you could open for her at Christopher's next month. So that was my actual first gig, was opening for Patty Griffin.
Oh,
That's
no
amazing.
big deal, right? That's
So
amazing.
yeah, so it was like that. It was I think there's some other folks that I'm forgetting, but it was pretty. The Neilds. The Neilds were living in Connecticut,
wow.
but they'd come, and we met because we were double booked on a $10 gig. And by mistake, and we met each other, and we ended up, and nobody was there anyway, it was just early. So we just hung out and played music, and they are some of my best friends, in life.
That's so
Well,
cool.
that's so great. And Jonathan Brooks been on the show before, now lives here in Minneapolis. And so it is amazing when you think of all this talent that just happens to be in the same spot at the same time. And this record came out, I can't remember what number this was in your career, but what, 5? Somewhere around there?
Yeah, 4. It was my fourth.
Fourth record, The Green World, came out in 2000, and that's the album that you picked to highlight today. And for those of you new to the show, this is what we do. We ask artists to pick old records of theirs to feature on the show, and then we listen to tracks and talk about the songs. And tell us why you picked this record.
Well, it was such a consistent thing, and people are like, "Do you know what you're gonna, write about or something?" I only know on the other side of it, and so this was one where all the songs I realized were had to do with like I'd been a religion major in college, and they all had to do with kind of like how once we've kind of encountered authority and dealt with authority, like where we the green world comes from a Shakespeare scholarship term, which is there's the closed world where we make all these rules, and then there's the green world, which is like the person, she goes off to the forest and she pretends she's a dude and everybody thinks she's her twin brother or whatever, or there's this huge storm and people are on an island, or there's a huge somebody's somebody casts a spell on you and you think that you're in love with somebody else, and the next thing you know there's a horse's an ass's head on your lap and you're whatever. So that's the green world, where suddenly all of your rules just blast apart. And you bring those things that happen to you out in the green world back into the closed world, and it changes things, usually a little bit for the better. You've blasted apart a hierarchy or a rigid way of thinking, and so the green world was kind of like getting out there and trying on all these different ways of dealing with your life, in your psyche, in your spirit, and what you do when you come back. So all of the songs had had these influences of these different religions I'd studied, and sort of were kind of out in the wilderness part of those religious experiences.
Wonderful. Awesome. Well, let's dig in and hear one of these songs from The Green World. And this first song that you picked to feature is What Do You Love More Than Love? Is there anything you want to say about it before we take a listen?
Yeah, I went to Bhutan. I was friends with this wonderful woman, a Buddhist Republican. So she was just like a real independent thinker, and she said, "You have to go to Bhutan." And I said, "Yeah, I will." And she goes, "No, you have to go now, because if you don't go now, you'll never go. You'll have kids, And so she yanked me across the country, and I was so moved by how they could love so many things with so little sort of that kind of, jealous, competitive, comparative angst. They just had love. They just, as a cultural witness, that's what I was seeing, and I knew enough about Buddhism to kind of know what was informing that.
Excellent.
Excellent. Let's take a listen. It says, "What Do You Love More Than Love" by Dar Williams on the Back Catalog Listening Party.
Well, the mountain was so beautiful that this guy built them all in a pizza shack. Hey, he built an ugly city because he wanted the mountain to love him back. Hey, what do you love more than love? Hey, what do you love more than love? When you know that you won't get your heart in the stone, when you drop your tools and you stand alone. Hey, what do you love more than love? Hey, what do you love more than love? Well, when my love felt like another addiction, I held my breath and I packed my bags, and I went to the land of the monastery and the sunshine children and the prayer flags. Hey, what do you love more than love? Hey, what do you love more than love? When you feel your soul go beyond your skin, when you know that's the way that it's always been. Hey, what do you love more than love? Hey, what do you love more than love? Well, I climbed a mountain and I thought about attachment. I thought about the Buddhist king. He said you can keep your superpower, it just short circuits my country. Hey, what do you love more than love? Hey, what do you love more than love? When you question what your desire is for, when you don't just figure that you just want more. Hey, what do you love more than love? Hey, what do you love more than love? Hey, hey, hey. Hey, well, I love the way the world is your garden. You plant your seeds and you let them grow, and you dig things out of the ground just like you'll take what comes, but you never know. And the mountain is so beautiful, and we don't know if we're any good at all. And we give our love when we think we still need it. Yeah, we give and for and for. Hey, what do you love more than love? Hey, what do you love more than love? When the giving is all that you ever get back. Whoa, how do you love like that? Can you tell me how to love? Hey, what do you love more than love? Hey, what do you love more than love? Hey, hey, hey. Hey, yeah.
Dar Williams here on the Back Catalog Listening Party with "What Do You Love More Than Love?"
Yeah.
And what a great way to kick off the show. I feel like whatever you were was going on with your week, I feel like that was what I needed to kick off
Yeah.
my weekend in the right spirit. So
It's a
that was
perfect way to start the
beautiful. And again, if you just joined us on Back Catalog Listening Party, again, we feature songs from old records and we invite guest artists to talk about the songs. And Dar Williams is joining us today to talk about this album that came out in 2020. Really? 21 years ago? I mean, 11 years ago, right? No, 21 years ago. I love
21.
See, that vaccine shot has gone to my head. I can do math. And one of the things I want to make sure folks know is that if you have questions for Dar about any of these songs or about the recordings, this is your chance to ask, because one thing I was interested in, Dar, is, again, you pick all the songs that we're going to be featuring on today's show, and you picked kind of deeper cuts on this. You didn't pick some of the songs that I think of as staples from your live set. So
No.
I mean, and that, which is great, because this is kind of your chance to talk about these songs that maybe you felt like didn't got short shrift or whatever. But is there anything that you heard when we were like listening to that song together that you thought about when, in terms of the recording of the record or the writing of that song?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I love that Sue and somebody else wrote about that there's a gross happiness index. Yes, an index of happiness instead of, so, Bhutan, it has these commitments to kind of looking at the bigger picture. I had worked with this guy, Steve Miller, who is really great. He worked for Windham Hill, and he was really into finding beautiful guitar sounds and really beautiful instrumental sounds. Not a fan of harmony. And I was like, but I'm a harmony whore. And he was like, I know. And we really, I like the spare thing. Everything else sounds a little derivative to me. And like all these other women who did saturated harmony. So when I did this one, it was like with my friend Stuart Lerman, who just produced my album that's coming out in September. It's like a smear of harmony. There's so much harmony in this record. You could tell I was like really letting loose. And the band is a great drummer named Steve Hawley, who is a British, and just so many. Actually, I have these wonderful pictures. I was like, I don't have any pictures. I was like, oh, wait a minute, I have a ton of pictures. I forgot, but I didn't send them to you. But here's my, here's a picture of Steve. Oh, shoot. Well, it's a really great one. We were on the road with, here's, I really think that they're cool with this, that I can show you this. Steve had this fantasy of being able to shave Gail Ann Dorsey's legs for her. Gail Ann Dorsey, who was the bass player for David Bowie, but she was off season, so she came and joined us. She was incredibly funny and lovely, and she's like, "All right, Steve." So here's a picture of him.
Oops, sorry.
Shaving her legs, and
Oh
she's
my God.
and just laughing, and
Oh my
and so
God.
that's Steve. And then I don't have a picture of him, but Rob Hyman from the Hooters is on all of those things. So if you hear those really interesting keyboard sounds, that's Rob, and then Stuart Smith, who is also I have a picture of. Here's a picture of him in a dressing room with Gail Ann Dorsey. I can't play with him anymore. He played a few tracks on my latest album, but I can't take him on the road because he's playing with this group called the Eagles. But but they were so. I mean, this was incredibly. And Graham Mabey, who plays with Joe Jackson, was on the bass, and so we went to this old church that became a recording thing, and it was haunted. This old haunted church, and there were all sorts of stories about things happening. And I had a friend who I said, I think there's a ghost. They say there's a ghost. And she's like, ghost? They're everywhere. So, if you hear something sparkling in the thing, I can't take all the credit. Apparently, I had some help.
Was there any
Wow.
experiences during the recording that?
Yeah, I think so. Steve always saw stuff. Steve Hawley, drummers often see the ghosts.
They are in their own world, I guess. Yeah.
We went up to the Catskills to do another album, and he's like, I saw, let's say, I saw the ghost. I'm pretty sure they have one. She was a woman. She was kind of tall. She was in a long red robe, and she had a cat or something like that. And the guy from the studio comes in and says, and Steve's like, I think I saw your ghost. And he said, oh, was it a tall woman in a red robe with a cat? He's like, yep, that's it. He said, yeah, that's her.
It's
So
no big
musicians
deal.
are not even fazed by it. They're like, we're not alone. And so
It's a studio ghost, yeah.
so I think, yeah, Steve probably saw something. He probably didn't even mention it. Like, oh, there they are.
That's cool.
But it's so funny because people often talk about, how certain spaces, do have like a vibe or a spirit to them. But maybe it's just ghosts, and just that we don't always see them. Maybe that's what's adding all the cool reverberations to a record. It's just ghosts that are hanging out, adding their parts.
They say, I mean, when you're a folk musician, you meet a lot of people who talk about this stuff, and they're like, if they're still here, that's not such a good sign. It's a good idea to move along and to trust that you can move along. So whoever's there is a little haunted themselves, perhaps, but it wasn't. And I think it was a little, but who's to say that a little kind of funky vibe isn't good for adding a different seasoning? It's
Depending on the kind of songs you're trying to create, maybe a little angst isn't a bad thing.
I mean, it's not sugar, but maybe it's cumin. So that was definitely like something was in the air
Wow.
while we were recording that, and they were just so. The great thing is that they were so supportive. You know, I would say things like, I know some language about like what chords are called and stuff. I mean, obviously, but sometimes it's better just to say like, I'm just hearing something. You know, I just want something that feels a little like a carnival, or I just want something, and everybody would go, okay, and they would just give you what they heard, and that was a lovely. They just took everything everybody and everything seriously.
That's awesome.
That's a language musicians speak. You can just use other adjectives and they get it.
Yeah.
If you're a
I
seasoned
do.
musician, you're like, turn up the purple. All right, I got that.
That's exactly like, no, that's not. I didn't say indigo. And and kids, I work with people and they talk to me that way, and I don't blink. I mean, that's you can pay that one forward.
For sure. Again, if you just tuned into Back Catalog Listening Party, we're talking with Dar Williams about her album, The Green World, recorded with a ghost who wore a red robe and had a cat, and and talking about the recording process for the album. The next song that we're going to feature is one of those songs that's a favorite of many, but you don't perform live. So I'm really excited to dig into this song with you. It's called "And a God Descended." Tell us a little bit about this song.
Well, okay, as I mentioned, religion major in college. So Bhutan, I studied Buddhism. Pandemic brought me back to Buddhism. Really taught me why it was a really bad idea to be a Buddhist when I was so young. You kind of got to build yourself up a little before you break yourself down a little. But that was that. And then I also was, I took a great course on Judaism, and there was a book that we read called Satan and Gore. I think it's by Isaac Bashevis Singer, and it's has to do with a false messianic cult in like Hungary or some around that area, and in the 16th century. But it's a real warning about what happens when when somebody comes and finds these kind of mystical language cues that have us step outside of what we know is right. They create another law, and there was some stuff going on in my life that was like that enough like that it was interesting enough to kind of trying to get inside the heads of these fictional characters from this book.
Excellent.
Semi-fictional, yeah.
Cool. This is Dar Williams and A God Descended in the Back Catalog Listening Party.
Step through this trampled wall, the unhinged door betrays it all. That far within our faith, we were all waiting. The broken glass reflects the haze, it shines like endless holy days, struggling to remember what they're celebrating. When a God descended, and the real time ended, his life was lifted just above the law, and now we have to live with what we did, with what we saw. Well, you mend your clothes and patch your roof, and slivers of God's shattered truth grow tender as the grass in clean swept yards. But a Savior came and told us how the truth was all around us now. Abandon house and field and gather up the shards. Well, God descended, and the real time ended. His life was lifted just above the law, and now we have to live with what we duty. Build your love, but there's a beauty. You know the scriptures tell there are a few sharps left in hell, and if we wanted God, we had to follow him Pictures torn out of their frames and orgies where we lost our names. All were gone with time's real desire. Well, you ask how God can curse you thus. That's not a question asked by us. We burnt our beds and books. We fear we've lost the fire.
Dar Williams here on the back catalog listening party with And a God Descended from her album that came out in 2000, 21 years ago, called The Green World. And, you know, listening to that again, it's been a while since I've just sat and listened to that song, not while I'm doing something else. And that's kind of the joy of this show. But there are so many cool sections and how it was produced, but in particular, that kind of during the talk about going down to hell, I love all the dissonant kind of
Yeah, I could hear that
sounds.
ghost, I think, in
Can
there.
I tell you what happened? I was going to tell you this. We were in the haunted church, and it was late, and everybody had left, and it was me and Stuart. So Stuart Smith and Stuart Lerman, who are best buddies. And I said, you know, I really want this kind of crazy lady sound on the piano, some of these really dissonant chords, and Stuart Smith, of course, plays all these instruments, and he's genius. And so he's like, all right, well, I'll try it. You know, Rob's not here, but I'll try it. And we go out to the piano, and Stuart hits the record button, Stuart Lerman, and Stuart Smith goes, you mean like this? And he plays this, like, gorgeous jazz chord, you know, so like really crazy for a folk singer, you know, but I said, no, not like that. And he said, okay, like this. And again, it's just like this gorgeous, you know, dissonant, but brilliantly and very beautifully. So I was like, move over. And I said, like this. And Stuart recorded it. And that's what it is.
Oh, wow.
I started to play it. Or, you know, like when a kid goes, okay, I'm going to play something for you. And they go, and they play it as if they're playing something. So it actually has some staccato, like, do-do-do-do-do-do, but it's like, it as if I were out of my mind. And I was like, that's exactly what I like. The guys were like, it's recorded. We'll stick it in. So
I love it,
Wow,
and
that's
I
awesome.
love that term. I'm going to use that again. Crazy lady piano. I think that's a great term.
not many applications for it, just to warn you. But also in the last verse, there's a thing that goes like, you ask how God can curse you thus. There's a piano part that goes, do 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 do. It's like an organ, and you know there was a lot of Procol Harum conversations going on, and so I think somebody was like, Rob, you got to shoot us some Procol Harum vibe. And you know, Procol Harum is whiter shades of pale, so
Yeah.
so you can hear the Procol Harum, you know, bowing down in there too. We were
So was
close
it
to
like a
Whistler.
group decision? I'm sorry to interrupt.
No.
Were these like group decisions? Like it sounded like you guys were just sitting there thinking about it, listening back, and everybody was just, you know, pitching in a little bit.
Yeah.
Is that the vibe I'm getting?
Yeah. Stuart Lerman's really, really great at saying, let's try it. and there's stuff that I tried that, God, I'm so embarrassed, that I was like, let's try this. Let's have a child's voice. Let's have us, let me scream, and he's like, okay. And I said, that was a terrible idea. And Stuart would be like, like I wasn't going to say it. So he was really wonderful about letting people, and in fact, the Green World I was trying to sort of say, okay, this is what I heard in my head. Can you try to replicate it? And all the stuff that they did that I hadn't thought of, but was there on their own terms. Rob played with the Hooters, and Steve came from all these different, like when they really threw themselves into it, those moments ended up being my favorite. So the whole team did the next record called Beauty of the Rain together, and Beauty of the Rain I like a little bit better because I can tell I'm not trying to curate it, and they could let themselves out a little bit more, and that was Stuart. That is Stuart. He just lets people shine, yeah. So everybody weighed in.
That's fascinating.
And it's also interesting because you've toured in lots of formats, solo and sometimes with a band or a couple people. But it seemed like many of the records that came out before this time, a lot of the times you were touring solo. So did this feel like a departure, kind of creating this sort of production playground rather than just kind of going in and doing your songs and bringing in players?
Well, I had done production playgrounds before, and people either really like that or don't like that, how different it is. So, we have opinions, but no, but it was, I mean, working with that kind of crowd, they were so nice to each other. They were so respectful of each other. And you see that, you've probably seen that, like, with like the Indigo Girls or people who are such pros that you'd think that they would be the biggest divas, but they really understand that you're just going to, kill each other if you don't have these things in place. So they were so polite and thoughtful, and no, you try this. Okay, you try this. You want me to do this, and so kind to me, and at the same time, they really kind of blew my mind. So that was the aspect of the playground that was kind of, life changing, and great.
Yeah. And by the way, Vaughn had a comment that just highlighting that line, which is such a great line. We have to live with what we did with what we saw. And a lot of folks commenting on sort of the lyricism of the song and the juxtaposition of the fact that someone was saying it, kind of meditative, but yet it's an upbeat song. And I've noticed that that's something that you like to do a lot of the time, which Tony and I appreciate coming from the bluegrass world, which is sad songs with up tempos, or contemplative songs with up tempos.
Yeah, exactly. No, it is fun that I remember when I wrote the song, "What Do You Hear in These Sounds," which had to do with therapy. I was like, really, Dar? A pop song about therapy? Okay, because it just comes into your head a certain way, and then you just pursue that. So it takes you and you go.
Right. So do you usually know kind of what song, like, do you ever sort of switch that on its head? You said that, like, sometimes the song just comes to you at a certain tempo or in a certain way. Is there ever a song that you've written where you're like, I thought this was going to be an up-tempo pop song, but actually I feel like, what if we slowed it down and totally changed the vibe?
I mean, I've experimented with that, but actually the best example of changing something completely was that I was going to write this ballad that had this feminist, this sad feminist ballad that said, "I will not be afraid of women. You will not do this to me," because, some slime ball did that. And, constant comparisons to other folk women, actually the women of folk. So Katrina Nields, what does she do that's so amazing? I'm like, Katrina's my friend. Don't make me jealous of Katrina. And like, oh, Jonathan Brooke. I mean, she's brilliant. I was like, I know she's brilliant, but, I'm not. Is that okay? And so it was, started to write this very sort of lamenting, like, how could you have thought that I would be afraid of my sisters? You can't do this to me. But I was driving in my car and I thought, as cool as I am, like, that just popped into my head. I'm like, as cool as I am what? So as cool as I am, I will not be afraid of women. I was like, yeah, I have a more pop feeling about it. Like, I'm not that angry because, it didn't work. Like, nice try. I mean, it was more like that. Like, did you know that I went to Wesleyan and that I have two sisters and I've never had brothers, and like, I really like my mom. You know that, right? And so, you've seen those pictures of me where I haven't shaved anything, except maybe my head, like, so I realized that attitude was better, and I was like, oh, thank you, Cosmos. That's correct.
And that's so funny that you say that, because I think any Dar Williams fan who knows the song you're talking about, As Cool as I Am, like, I can't even imagine it as a slow song, like, at all. It's such a, like, kind of anthemic now, which is kind of great, too.
Well, and it's come up more than once on this show, the idea that music is one of the few, languages where you can say two things at the exact same time,
Right on.
and it's that kind of that tension between maybe the lyrics and the feel, that actually touch us in the most, pure way, because it's not, black or white all the time.
Yeah,
Exactly.
for sure. And well, let's try and we'll see how many songs we can squeeze into today's show, because I'm really excited to revisit these songs with you. The next track that you picked out is I Won't Be Your Yoko Ono. Is there anything you want to say before we listen to the song?
Yeah, I wrote this for a movie that didn't get made. I wrote the song Smoke Signals I wrote the song Road Buddy for Smoke Signals, and that was really exciting, and I'm very honored. And so Sherman said, we're writing this thing, and basically there's this scene where somebody says to this guy's girlfriend, don't be a Yoko Ono, and then she walks into the hall and sings a song to herself. And if you could write that song, and I was like, oh, I can write that song. Like, Yoko is amazing. You'd be lucky if you had a Yoko in your life. Like, you wish. So I kind of followed that thread.
All right. I Won't Be Your Yoko Ono by Dar Williams here on the Back Catalog Listening Party.
Thought of staying solo, if she thought of other men, and if she doubted John Lennon, worrying that he'd distract her, or sitting in the Apple sessions, giving John her music lessons, challenging the warring nations with her paper installations. Did she guard her Yoko human heart? Well, they could talk about me. Yeah, they could talk about me. Throw me to the velvet dogs of pop star history. But I won't be your Yoko Ono if you're not good enough for me. Some will give their love for fashion, others trade their gold for passion. I don't have the goods to start with, never had the reins to part with. Still, I hope you take me seriously, 'cause I think I could go deep as the sea of Yoko. You don't know a person like me. I could sell your songs to Nike, and for all you know, I could save your soul. That's only true love can change your mind, make you leave your screaming face behind. When John called the wind an opera, making love with every chakra. When he said her voice would carry, and when he whispered, oh Chuck Berry, only then would Yoko set him free. Fame will come and vanish later, transcendental love is greater. I think if we had this somehow, we'd be feeling famous right now. We'd be saying love is all you need. And they could rap about me.
Dar Williams with I Won't Be Your Yoko Ono from The Green World, which we are revisiting today on the Back Catalog Listening Party with Dar joining us. And Sue had, I think, a really great question. Have you ever met Yoko?
No, no. And actually, I have this picture of her saying, I didn't sell his, you say you want a revolution to Nike. That was Michael Jackson who did that. And I'd be like, but you did sell it to Michael Jackson. I thought, then I would be getting in a fight with Yoko Ono. So no, it's okay. I don't have to meet her. But I was really interesting. I met a lot of women, sort of Pacific Rim, West Coast women who said that they really loved there were so many, like Yoko Ono had a sort of a special cultural significance to them for the way that she stepped out and did what she did as Asian American women, and they're like, it's a thing. It's kind of a, and so we're glad that you kind of brought her out into what we in New York knew her as, which is like the queen of the Fluxus movement and all of this great art that I think really influenced the Beatles a lot. I mean, specifically John Lennon, but like the whole vibe,
Yeah, for sure. And I know that that's a favorite amongst many because, I think a lot of people feel like, why is Yoko Ono the one who gets the bad rap?
Yeah. And it's funny because the guys were like, everywhere we went, like where we ended up recording this separately. And the dressing room was just, like the studio lobby, waiting room was filled with books about the Beatles, like the real Beatles, the complete Beatles, the comprehensive catalog of their songs, backstories, anyone that you record with, they just love the Beatles. And it's because the Beatles are the kitchen sink of so much musical stuff. And so I was like, okay, losing battle. But I went to Wesleyan where John Cage taught and stuff. And Yoko was that, she was really, really important to a lot of the artists that I knew, myself included. Like I was in the Whitney Museum once, and they had these people who were doing all of these really cool things that were very complicated, like a Mobius strip somebody had made, and all these complicated things. And she just had a TV set with the sky, just a continuous loop of just the sky. And, their CNN over in London is called Sky TV, and such. This is called Sky TV. And, that kind of permission can be pretty enormous, in terms of culturally. So I fought the fight with this.
Well, I will say too, hearing again hearing the songs today, the way we're hearing them, from the high quality audio files, and I will say, if you are liking what you're hearing today and you don't own the record, you might want to buy it or listen to it on your own time. Maybe, I know through the interwebs it doesn't quite always sound as high fidelity as we're hearing it, but again, the production on this is so beautiful and so lush, and there's so much going on in these songs that I highly recommend that. And a lot of people commenting, of course, on the songwriting, and I know that you are a prolific songwriter, obviously written many songs over the years, but you also teach songwriting, and you've been doing a lot of that during this time when you haven't been touring, and you have some songwriting retreats coming up, right?
Yes, we discovered all the stuff that we could do. So I do this, I've been teaching this or leading a songwriting retreat since 2013. And that's been really like a very meaningful part of my life. And there's this team, and we all have a very similar philosophy. We're all songwriters. And so we just, Rick and Michelle and Raquel and I all sort of equally, a lot of people just want to know whether what they wrote is a song, and they say, yes, it's a song because it's this and this. But, maybe I can't tell if you're saying S-U-N or S-O-N when you say sun, and maybe that's good. Maybe you like that, like really like widely set apart fence posts, so that the field is very large for what we call a song. And so we had to take it into Zoom. We did a Zoom retreat. And it worked. And then people sort of seemed to want more. So we did like a mini retreat. We did a couple of mini retreats over the winter and spring. And then I did these things where, and this is going to happen next week, we're going to do this again. We do these day-long ones where I chose themes. So in the winter it was love and self and nature and politics and something else. And we had people visiting to do, because Beth Nielsen Chapman came, and James Keelahan came, and so it's like 10 to 5, and so that now the themes are friendship, love, self, spirituality, and family. So, but you could do whatever you want. But anyway, so we listen to songs and we talk about them, we break them down, and so yes, I'm doing that next week. And I'll be doing that from now on. I'll be mixing that into my quiver of my quiver of arrows. Into my career going forward, doing online stuff, which I think, it's been great to connect with people all over the world with this.
Yeah, and it makes it much more accessible to everybody.
Yeah.
Which is so great.
And you don't lose the feeling. You don't lose the good stuff.
Yeah, that's great. And again, you have not been bored during this time, because in addition to doing these Zoom songwriting retreats, you mentioned kind of offhanded, and in case people didn't hear this, you have a record coming out this fall, so you've been working on that.
I do a little bit. It was mostly in the can. It was supposed to come out in September 2020. So my brilliant manager, Patty, who said, let's plug in the entire tour into the fall of 2021. So we just plugged in those dates, and it'll be with Bryn Roberts and Wade from Jump Little Children, which I'm excited about.
Nice.
And we're just going to pretend that I didn't spend a year pretending I was Laura Ingalls Wilder.
And by the way, I love that Patty chimed in. October 1st, she says.
October 1st.
Good manager,
I
Patty.
told you she was great.
Yeah, exactly. And then also, you're working on a book. So, again, not bored.
No. Did I tell you that I was working on a book? Well,
Yeah.
I wrote a book. The first draft is in, which is called Writing a Song That Matters. So it's about writing songs, and so I'm trying to turn it into sort of a pedagogy without being uptight. That's the hope. So it's a writing book that hopefully won't make people not want. I've read writing books that maybe be like, okay, now I don't want to write. So
Yeah, it makes it too clinical or something.
Yeah, I want to. I want to, I want to be a force of good.
It'll be specifically about songwriting. And you mentioned early on that playwriting was in your early aspirations. Do you find that kind of stuff is now kind of underlying the songwriting? It's just a question I had as we were listening to all these tunes, and maybe it could inform this conversation about both your songwriting retreat and this book. Just how those pieces of the puzzle connect.
Yeah. So yeah. Here's the thing. A theater piece is kind of like it's like music, because you have, like, theater has props, has language with props and actors and costumes, and music has things with like rests and repetitions and, bridges and so if so you know that you have more to play, like that words are what you have in both of those media, but the whole point is to play with it and to see what kinds of rules that you break in order to make things. So there's songs where things don't rhyme, and they did in the last verse, but they don't in this verse, and that's totally from theater. It's like, no, but I did that on purpose, because we're humans, and that condition, that experience has this opportunity to kind of live with all of its idiosyncrasies within music the way it would on a stage. And so I'm really grateful. And also stage, theater is all about telling stories. Is that a Child on the Street, Ellen, or is that yours?
It's mine, but it's all good. It's in hand. It's all good.
Wow, that was quick. No, he's still at it. Okay, never mind.
Well, that explanation though about how the crossover between, say, songs and theater gets to a great question here that we got from Beth, who was wondering about, would you ever consider expanding your songwriting retreats for more just creative writing for those who aren't musically inclined? And from the way you talked about it, it sounds like somebody who's just into creative writing would get a lot from it as well. Is that correct?
Well, what we have are people who are interested in seeing if they can team up with musicians with their poetry. So we haven't had people who just come to us with poetry for poetry. They have, and we talk about it, and we talk about the sort of the lyricism of the poetry and the way that the poetry works. But it's more like people who are trying to figure out how to transition that into. So the question is like, what's the rhythm of what you're saying? Is there a melody that you heard? Can you think in terms of, if you don't know the name of the chord, can you tell if it's blue or indigo or purple?
Sure.
And so we help people if they're interested in that. But poetry is like I've been writing songs for a long time, and I really feel like it's my plaything. Like I love to write songs, and I love. I mean, they're hard, and I know why they're hard, but that's my Play-Doh. And other people teach like poetry workshops and stuff who, and they kind of blow my mind, and I kind of like feel like they should do their thing and I'll do mine. But so I'm sorry. I think that Beth, I would love to meet you and I would love to see, but usually it's people who want to put the poetry into songs.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Well, again, darwilliams.com. You can find out about all these cool things that Dar is working on. But let's try and squeeze in at least one more song before we go today. And the next track you picked to feature from this album, The Green World, is I Had No Right. Is there anything you want to say about it before we dive in?
Well, this is, so we've got Judaism, we've got paganism with a song called Calling the Moon. We've got Buddhism, and this is, lefty Christianity. And this is a song that came out of reading the Trial of the Catonsville Nine, which is a verse account of a trial, of like the transcript of a trial of people who, the Catonsville Nine, who were comprised of priests and nuns and Catholic and lay people who decided in their conscience that the best thing they could do is to destroy draft files, and they were castigated by the left as well as the right. People said, destruction of property is too close to is too aggressive, too violent, and so I met a lot of the Berrigans, and I sang this at Daniel Berrigan's wake, actually, and at his 80th birthday party. So. And I met a lot of his family members, and actually even before I sang the song, I met Jerry, who lives in northern Minnesota. Oh, no, actually, I think he lives in Wisconsin. Where does he live? Oh, well, I won't say where he lives. I know
Upper Midwest.
Yeah, he's in the upper Midwest. But Jerry Berrigan is Phil Berrigan's son, and it's just been an honor to they'll blow your mind, as you might expect. And also, I want to say, my friend John Deere, Father John Deere, is a very, very dear friend and kind of an advisor to me. And he's radically, every letter he signs off, he says, have a wonderful day and be nonviolent. And he really speaks of and he started something called the Beatitude Center. And I told him that I wanted to let people know, it's a really, I have friends who have, really loved sort of looping some of their Christianity or Catholicism through Father John Deere, and it's the Beatitude Center that he's running, which is sort of radical nonviolence and service-oriented Christianity.
Very cool. Well, we can grab a link for that after the show. We'll put it
that would be great.
On our webpage and in the show notes. So for those of you who are listening later, you can check that out.
The Berrigans, a lot more came out of a lot more happened to me after I wrote the song than before I wrote the song. It ushered me into a whole part of my life. I'm not a Catholic, but but I might as well be. No, but it was the Berrigans really. They stand strong in how they view American society and how they act.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, let's take a listen to "I Had No Right," Dar Williams on the Back Catalog Listening Party.
God of the poor man, this is how the day began. 8 co-defendants, I, Daniel Berrigan. Oh, and only a layman's batch of napalm. We pulled the draft files out, we burned them in the parking lot. Better the files than the bodies of children. I had no right before the love of you. I had no right before the love of you. Many roads led here, walked with the suffering Tom in Guatemala, Philip in New Orleans. Oh, it's a long road from law to justice. I went to Vietnam, I went for peace. They dropped their bombs right where my government knew I would be. I had no right before the love of you. I had no right before the love of you. And all my country saw were priests who broke the law. First it was a question, then it was a mission. How to be American, how to be a Christian. Oh, if the law is their cross and the cross is burning. Hey, love of you. God of the just, I'll never win a peace prize. Falling like Jesus, now let the jury rise. Oh, it's all of us versus all that paper. They took the only way they know who is on trial today. Deliver us unto each other, I pray. I had no right before the love of you. And every trial I stood for you. Eyes on the trial, 8 a.m. arrival, hand on the Bible.
All right. Dar Williams with I Had No Right from her 2000 release called The Green World. Oh,
That's a protest I went to because Jerry Berrigan said, "Have you been doing any anti-nuclear protests?" And because I had done one in 1992 and written a song about it with Jim Infantino, and I said no, and he goes, "Would you like to?" So that's me in northern in Wisconsin somewhere. No, Minnesota. Anyway. Wisconsin.
The Upper Midwest.
Thank you, Tony. You gave me the out. So
Works every time.
And there's a picture of somebody. There they are about to get arrested. It's Bonnie, and I'm not remembering who else, sawing down a pole that's put up for the ELF system that was illegal. And so anyway, it worked.
and Katie Dahl chimed in, Wisconsin, she says. And she
Yeah.
should know because she lives in Wisconsin. So
Yeah.
I was wondering. I was looking at a picture. I was like, "Is that Katie?" Yeah, it's definite Katie country. Yeah, it was Wisconsin, and it was a Mother's Day protest. You know, I think these holidays like Mother's Day and Easter, those are really good dates to do a protest. Like just turn every Easter, just turn it on its ear. So, so anyway.
yes. Well, this has been so much fun to
Yeah,
get the stories behind these songs and just to listen to these songs again. Again, these are kind of for the deep Dar fan, they'll know these songs, but these aren't the songs that you're going to hear at every Dar show. So it's kind of fun to revisit them again with you, and we're really looking forward to the new record coming out this fall, and also to learn more about songwriting from your book. Both Tony and I can learn something from your book. So
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, no, maybe not, but I really, it was great. I don't know if you've ever taught songwriting, but it was great to teach songwriting and then to feel like it didn't, if you're doing it in a way that's too controlling, you don't want to write songs yourself. Like I wouldn't want to, and I keep on wanting to write songs. So I feel like I've kept it open enough, but there's some, like, it's how we nurture the first spark. It's what we do when we like, it's a song, but where is it going? And then it's like, how do we tie it all up together at the end? And just how do we do it?
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. That sounds
Well,
great.
Yeah, thanks, Sue. And then Mary said, I got so much out of this show, thank you, and so did we. And if you did enjoy the show, it will be available later on the archives at the same YouTube link. And if you like it, because it will let the bots know that they should see Dar and see the show. And you can also subscribe to our YouTube channel so you get notified about upcoming guests. And we have a lot of great ones coming up, and you can find out about them that way by subscribing or by liking us on Facebook, and we'll let you know about those shows. And there's people that keep this show going, our Patreon supporters. And we want to thank Penny, Ann, Alinda, Bevan, Connie, Vaughn, Alan, Chris, Alex, Becky, Galen, Peggy, Joe, Jim, Beverly, John, Fred, Tim, Sarah, David, and our newest Patreon supporter, Jocelyn.
Welcome, Jocelyn.
Thank you so much. And if you want to join our Patreon and support us, you get lots of cool things. Like last week, we did an after party conversation with Stephen Kellogg, who says hi, Dar, by the way. Yeah. And then we also have a 1-year birthday party coming up.
Ooh, that's gonna be fun.
With Jonathan Brooke, Davina and the Vagabonds, and the Wild Ponies out of Nashville. And it's going to be a great online private show for our Patreon supporters. So you can get in on that when you support the show. But mainly, thank you for listening. This is why we do it. To talk with artists, listen to music, and hang out with you guys for an hour. And it's been a lot of fun. So thank you, Matt, and thanks to all of you for joining us today. And most especially, thank you to Dar.
Thank you, Dar.
Thank you.
Thank
Can
you
I
so
tell
much.
one last thing before you sign off?
Yeah.
Your grandmother was my canoeing counselor at camp.
It's true. That's our deepest connection through the green world, if you will.
Wait, what now? You're...
So I first heard Dar at my summer camp, Camp
Okay.
Aloha in Vermont, and she had gone to the camp and been a counselor there, and then she came back to play a show when I was a teenager, and that was the first time I heard Dar's music, and I was like, oh, she's so great, and then later I found out. I remember asking my
said
grandmother.
That in your teenage voice, by the way. I don't know
Yeah,
if
I
you caught
did.
that. Okay,
I did. And I told my grandmother, who worked at this camp for like 30 years, after that summer, I came back and I said, hey, did you ever know someone named Dar Williams? And she said, oh, yeah, that was that cute little girl who sang songs in the back of the van when we went on canoeing trips. And I thought that was perfect because I was like, yeah, well, now she does it for a living and she's awesome. And then later when Dar and I connected, she was like, oh, your grandmother Al taught me how to canoe. So
Yeah.
That's great.
just a great little connection.
And congratulations on syndication. Fantastic. Really excited. And I'll give you a quote, and it won't be your grandmother was my canoeing counselor.
Awesome. Well, I love that. And again, thank you so much for joining us today. This has been such a treat.
What a
And,
great,
Thank you.
what a great time. Thanks, Dar, and thanks to all of you for being here and all your great comments. And this has gotten us through the last year of this pandemic, and we're looking forward to keeping it going. Kind of like Dar and her songwriting stuff. This medium it has some great benefits, including reaching people in Northern Ireland and England and all you folks who chimed in today. It means a lot to us that you're here every week, and it means so much to us that we can gather here over great music like yours, Dar. Thank you.
Fun. All right, everyone. Good night.
Well, have
All
a
right.
great weekend. And till next week.
See ya.
Cheers.